Welcome to 16 weeks of SATs. Now this week is the final video, the final week of 16 weeks of SATs, and we're going to be looking at question types to do with fractions and fractions of amounts. So these are the final question types that we're going to need to mop up. We've covered huge amounts of fractions type questions, but this week we're just going to be looking at the final questions. They're all super easy. We can sometimes get a little bit confused with them, but they generally always crop up. There's going to be 3 or 4 marks, and we just need to know the simple process of how to do them. So we're going to look at fractions of amounts. We're going to look at dividing fractions by whole numbers and multiplying fractions by whole numbers. And then we're quickly just going to refresh, because I think we've covered it already. We're going to look at multiplying fractions by fractions. So all 4 of these are relatively simple processes. And to be honest, we're just going to look at the simple little trick of how and why we do the trick, and that will get us the answer, because these questions always crop up in some way, shape or form, and they're easy marks to pick up. So that's what we're going to be doing this week. Just to note, there will be probably a few videos in addition to today in the run up to SAT. Your SATs are only a few weeks away now, and I will be adding a few more short videos just to pick up some key things prior to the SATs happening. So let's get stuck into this content. We'll look at finding fractions of amounts, we'll look at multiplying and dividing fractions by whole numbers, and then multiplying fractions together to really just mop up everything to do with fractions and fractions of amounts. Dead simple, dead straightforward, and 3 or 4 easy marks in the SATs paper to pick up. So let's get stuck in to the content. So when it comes to fractions of amounts, this is the first question type we're going to look at. We get this type of question. So we get a fraction of a number. Okay. So the first thing we need to just think about is a lot of these will relate very closely to our knowledge of multiplication facts. So hopefully here you can see the denominator 3 and the number 27 are related via the 3 times table. So the multiplication facts are always going to help us solve these problems. And we're just basically trying to find, all this question is saying is that if we break 27 into 3 parts, how much is 2 of them? So in order to find that, we basically need to find what 1/3 is. Okay, so the little tip that everyone will probably know is when we get a fractions of amounts question like this, 2/3 of 27, the strategy is divide by the bottom. So we'll just write this next to it. So we're going to divide by the bottom number times by the top number. Okay, so we're going to do 27 divided by the bottom number, which is 3. And then that answer we're going to multiply by 2. So we're going to do, I'm just going to write this out. You would just do it in your head. 27 divided by 3, which we know to be 9. And then we're going, which is divided by the bottom number, the denominator. And then we're going to do 9 times by 2, the numerator, which is 18. And that would be our answer. All right. So we would get 18 as the answer. So 2/3 of 18. And that's because 9, let's get a pen, 9 add 9 add 9 is 27. So that is 1/3. That is, well, we'll do it this way. That's also 1/3. And this is also 1/3. So 2/3, if we look at here, we've got 2/3 here. That's going to be 18, isn't it? 3/3 would be 27. So that's the whole amount of the question. And similarly, just over here, when we work with a larger number, what we should be looking at is trying to see, when we see this question straight away, we should spot in there this relationship, because we don't know necessarily what 2/3 of 270 is, because that's something we're not really used to dealing with on a daily basis. But we should be able to see these related facts of, well, we can see 27 in there, so I can just work with 27. And it's the same process as over here. All right. How many 3s are in 270? Okay, well, I'm not really sure about that, but I know how many 3s are in 27, which is 9. So 207, if 27 divided by 3 is 9, then 270 divided by 3 must be 90. So again, I'm going to record that. So 270 divided by 3, which is the denominator, the bottom number. We know 27 divided by 3 is 9. So 270 divided by 3 must be 90. And then we're going to do 90 times 2, because the numerator up here is 2. So again, I might not know what 90 times 2 is, but I know what 9 times 2 is. 9 times 2 is 18. So 90 times 2 is going to be 180. So that's me really going through the nitty-gritty of it. But ultimately, the strategy here is divide by the bottom times by the top. So divide by the denominator times by the numerator, and that will get you your answer. And these questions crop up all the time. You're definitely going to get 1. I wouldn't imagine you'll get 2. The other variation that you just need to look out for is if this question type does this, and it says 2/3 times 27, or 2/3 times 270, and all times is basically doing here is saying of. All right, so if that question crops up, you don't need to be worried about it, because it just means the same thing. So again, just to reiterate that, if we have, for example, this question here said 3/4 times 240, or 2/5 times 300, it's basically just saying of. All right, so if we see those, there's nothing to get panicky about. It's just the same thing. And all we're trying to do is find 3/4 of 240, all right? Which will basically go into divide by the bottom times by the top, okay? Divide by the denominator, multiply that answer by the numerator. Very simple. So again, just looking quickly at this question, we should be able to see the relationship, which crops up quite a lot, between 4 and 24. So it's divisible. There's going to be 6, isn't it? Okay. So again, if we're going to divide by 24, divide 24 by 4, then that's going to help us a lot, isn't it? So we're going to do 240 divided by 4. Oh, well, in my head, I'm not really sure about that, but I know 24 divided by 4 is equal to 6. So 240 divided by 4 must be 60. All right. Then I'm going to do 60 times the numerator up here, which is 3. So 60 times 3. Oh, I'm not really sure about that. Well, I know that 6 times 3 is 18. Okay. So 18. So 60 times 3 must be 180. Very, very simple. Okay. So that would be your answer. 3/4 of 240 is 180. And again, we're going to do the same over on this question. We should see the relationship straight away between the denominator, and potentially 30. Great. So very simple. Again, divide by the bottom times by the top. So I'm going to do 300. And again, you wouldn't need to make these notes. I'm just making them so you can see the process I'm going through. 300 divided by 5. Oh, well, I'm not quite sure what 300 divided by 5 is, but I know my 5 times table, and I can see 30 divided by 5, which I know is 6. So 300 divided by 5 must be 60. All right, and then I'm going to do 60 times the numerator, which up here, which is 2. So I'm going to do 60 times 2, which is equal to, again, I would imagine most of you know what 60 times 2 is, absolutely. But if we didn't, well, I know what 6 times 2 is. 6 times 2 is 12. So 60 times 2 must be 120. And that would be our answer. Very, very simple. And again, divide by the bottom times by the top. And again, in the SATs papers, they do tend to be as simple as this as well. You're either going to get a 100 number or something like this. But again, if we just drop into these questions, and straight away we can see the relationship between 7 and 28. We can see the relationship between 9 and 63. They're our multiplication facts. So dead straightforward. So again, I'm going to do, quite quickly this time, I'm going to do 28. Always do that. 28 divided by 7 which we know to be 4. Very, very simple. 7, 14, 21, 28, 4 times. And then I'm going to do 4 times the numerator, which is up here, which is also 4. So 4 times 4 is 16. Very, very simple. And again, over here, we've got 6/9 of 63. And again, if the SATs papers try to be a bit sneaky and show it as 6/9 times 63, then it just means of. Okay, we don't need to worry about that too much. So we've got 63 divided by 9, which we know is 7, because it's just our 9 times table. And then we're going to do 7 times the numerator up here, which is 6. So 7 times 6 is 42. Very, very simple. Job done. Okay, so we can solve these problems really quickly and really effectively by dividing by the bottom, timesing by the top. And if we do get this multiply symbol, we just know that that means of. And again, here are some SATs questions for us to look at. Now, really with this question, what we're trying to find is, this is a relatively simple question, and really we should be able to find 3/4 without much effort. Now, again, what you'll see if we try to use the previous strategy and go, right, well, we know it's fractions of amounts, so we're going to divide by the bottom times by the top. Ideally, we would just, because it's 1,000, we would just know that if we're thinking about thousands, we know that we've got 250 is a quarter, 500 is 2/4 or a half, 750 is 3/4. So really, most of you should just be able to be like, well, this is 750, okay, because it's just quarters. But again, if we looked at 100 and we went, right, how many 4s? If we divided 100 divided by 4, well, that's 25. So 1,000 divided by 4 must be 250. Okay, so we've got 250 times 3, which is going to be 750. But again, this one is one of these awkward ones. It's a little bit like what am I thinking of? It's a little bit like divided by 10, 100, and 1,000. We can get tricked into doing some sort of long strategy. And really the strategy for this question type is that we should just know, because even in me writing this out, it doesn't really make that much. It does make sense, but really we should just know that 3/4 of 1,000 is 750. We should, if it was 1/4 of 1,000, we should just know that that's 250. We should know that half or 2/4 of 1,000 is 500. We should know that 3/4 or 3/4 of 1,000 is 750. They're just sort of basic facts that we should know on the journey to 1,000. Okay, so those ones can be a little bit tricky. Whereas these ones are more of your classic. Okay, so again, straight away, we should be able to spot. We can see 10, we can see 30, see that it's in the same times table. And again, divide by the bottom times by the top. Dead straightforward. So we would be doing 30 divided by 10 is 3. And then 3 times the numerator, which is this number, times 7 is 21. That's the answer. And again, when you crop up, and if we look, this is question 22. All right, you should be able to do this in I've made some jottings so that you can see it, but this is such a simple question. All right, how many 30 divided by 10 is 3, times that by 7, 21. It should literally take 5 seconds to do in your head. You don't really need to do any working out. You just go, okay, 30 divided by 10, that's 3 times 7, 21. Boom, boom, job done. So that's these question types covered. There isn't any more examples, but when you see you may get one of these in your SATs. Okay, and remember, if you see that of and a fraction and a whole number, it's just divide by the bottom, divide by the denominator, times by the numerator. So the next question type is one that crops up quite a lot. They're fairly common, especially these division ones. So it's basically a fraction divided or times by or multiplied by a whole number. And the reason why I'm showing both question types is because I want you to see the difference, because essentially they look super similar, don't they? All right, if we have a look, the only difference is we've got a divide and we've got and multiply. Now, the key thing here that I want you to remember is that regardless of the question type, to solve, I said we're going to look at a little bit of a trick. We're not really going to get into the whys, but with both of these question types, we are going to multiply. All right. So even though it says divide here, to solve the problem, we are going to multiply. So the really good thing is that regardless if we get this question type, if you see a fraction divided by a whole number or a fraction times a whole number, you know that we are just going to multiply, okay? So the key here is whenever we see these questions, either way, we are going to multiply, all right? So we don't need to actually divide. Now, all these symbols are going to do is tell us which part of the fraction we are actually going to multiply, all right? So this part and this part. And I'm going to go through that. So with this question type, I've made a lot of like colors up here. But basically, if we see divide, then the division symbol, my little tip is the division symbol begins with D. Okay? So does denominator. So when we get this, these are the two numbers that we're going to multiply together. Okay, so we're going to do 3 times 4, which is going to give us 12. So we see the division symbol, we're going to multiply the denominator. Division, denominator, division, denominator. So it's these two that we're going to multiply. All right, and that's basically going to give us our answer. So this is how simple these questions are. So I'm going to do 2 over 3 divided by 4, which basically means I multiply these together and the numerator stays the same. So it just becomes 2 over 12. That is the answer. All right. It would take a much longer lesson to get in, and I'd need to visually show you why that is the case. Okay. But essentially, because we're dividing, we're getting more of them. Okay. So this number has to increase, so we have to multiply. So it's that simple. So you see divide, you just multiply these together, and that is the answer. Super, super simple. Now, if we see the times, okay, times begins with T, so does top. Okay, if we see the times, we do the top number. Dead, dead simple. So we're just going to multiply them together. Very, very simple. 2, always do that. 2 over 3 times 4. We're basically going to multiply these numbers together. So in this question type over here, the divide, we times these numbers together. In this question type, we times these numbers together. So that is going to give us 8, isn't it? So that's going to give us 8 over 3. Now at this point, the good practice is to convert this into, because this is an improper fraction, so we need to do how many 3s are in 8? Well, there's 2, because that gets us to 6. And there's 2 more to get to 8. So that is the new numerator. So 2 and 2 8s. Now, the issue, this is fine. Actually, just as a note, these questions crop up all in every stats paper that I've looked at from the past 6 or however many it is. These questions are always in there. And sometimes there's even 2. And for me, it's so easy. There's not as many of these. There's hardly any. And when they do crop up, they tend to be a little bit like this. So they tend to be something like 2 over 5 times 120. And they give you this like situation where you end up with a large number like 240 over 5. And really what they want you to do is they don't really want this. They want you to give the whole number, because there is a whole number in there. So you would have to work out how many 5s are in 240. All right. So that would give you the answer. But these ones are so much less prevalent, which means they don't come up that often. That doesn't mean that they won't. So again, because I think we've covered this before, again, we see the division symbol, we know that so again, the key thing with both these question sets is we know that we are going to multiply. So regardless, we're multiplying. So we've got 2 over 5 divided by 3. We know that we've got the division symbol, so division begins with D, so we're going to multiply the denominator. So that's going to be these two numbers, very, very simple. And again, that's going to be 2 over 15. And that's as simple as it is. That gets us the mark. We write that in the blue box. That's it, job done, we move on. And again, likewise over here, we've got 2 over 5 times 3, or multiply by 3. So again, times begins with T, so we're going to do the top number. So we can see that the answer is 6 over 5 already. So we've got 6 over 5. And again, because this is an improper fraction, because the numerator is larger, we're going to do how many 5s are in 6? Well, there's 1, isn't there? How many is left over? Well, there's 1 because we're at 5. To get to 6, there's 1 more, and the denominator just stays the same. So we've got 1 and 1/5. Okay. I've looked at all the mark schemes, and I'd love to be able to give you a definite answer on which of these answer types that they prefer. Now, this is fine because it's a normal fraction. I would suggest that we convert to the mixed number, because sometimes, depending on the question type, they prefer this. But because these questions aren't coming up very often, there aren't loads of examples where I can refer to the mark scheme. So ultimately, the mark scheme is key. Basically, if you convert to a mixed number, it can't really be marked wrong because that's correct. It may be that they accept the improper fraction, but if you can convert to a mixed number, then great, I would suggest you do that. And again, we've got a few more examples. So with this one, we've got 4 over 6 divided by 4. So again, it's division, so we know we're going to do the denominator. So basically 6 times 4 is 24. And numerator stays the same. Very, very simple. And this is how easy these questions are, guys. We've got 6 over 4 times 4, which gives us, again, because it's times, we're going to multiply the numerator. So we've got 16 over 6. And again, that's an improper fraction. So we would go, how many 6s are in 16? Well, there's 2 whole ones, because that gets us to 12. And then we count them from 12 to 16, which gives us 4 remainder. So 2 and 4 over 6. So as you can see, we get a very different answer depending on which way we go with these questions. And again, regardless if it's a times or a divide, with these question types, we are multiplying. So the key to remember is that both of these questions, we are going to multiply to get the answer. And this is the final example from me. So again, we've got 1 over 8 divided by 5. So we see the division symbol. That means we're going to multiply the denominator. So 8 times 5 is 40. So we've got 1 over 40. Very, very simple, job done. And then this one, we've got 1 over 8 times 5. So we're going to multiply the numerator. So that leaves us with 5 over 8. And then because that is a proper fraction, there's nothing that we need to do there. And again, this one would have been fine as well. So we would have just transferred both of these into the answer boxes, wherever that was, to get the mark. So again, these questions are really simple. Let's take a look at a few SATs questions. So again, we see the divide symbol, and again, we're just going to go through the process. So we've got 1. Again, you wouldn't write this out, because you can. This is what this space is for. So we've got 1 over 4 divided by 2. So basically, we're going to multiply these two parts of the question together. So that means that we're going to get 1 over 8, which is the answer. So we're just going to write that in, 1 over 8. Very, very simple. And to be honest, once you've done enough of these and you know that you're just multiplying these together, you can just see that it's 1 over 8. So you don't need to do, if you feel comfortable, great. But if you just know that it's 1 over 8, just write the answer in, move on, well done. And again, look, this is supposed to be one of the more difficult questions in the test. It's question 31. There's only another 5 questions after this. So ultimately, it's very simple. You just got to remember what to do. The maths isn't difficult. And again, just to show that the maths isn't difficult, we know that we're going to multiply these two together. So you should be able to see already the answer is 2 over 9. It's so simple. And again, if you really want to see it in action, 2 over 3 divided by 3. Because it's a division, we know that we're multiplying regardless. So we're just going to multiply these two digits together. Very, very simple. So that means I'm going to get 2 over 9. Now, you don't get anything extra for doing this if you can just see that we're multiplying these together and that we get 2 over 9. Great. Just write it in here. You'll get the mark. Move on really, really quickly. And again, here's another one. So straight away, you should just be able to see that that's going to be 16. So the answer is just 1 over 16. So we just write that in, 1 over 16, dead simple. And again, if we want to see it in action, we've got 1 over 8 divided by 2. So again, realizing that we need to, because regardless, we're going to multiply. So we're going to multiply the denominator by the whole number. So that's just going to give us 1 over 16. Very simple. But we don't need to do this. We can just see the answer, write it in, get the mark. And here's another question. Like, again, in the SATs papers, there's a few SATs papers where there's at least 2 of these questions, and they're so easy. They're so easy. And again, you can just see that the answer here is 1 over 24. It's very simple. Okay, we're going to multiply these two together. So 1 over 8. So we already know the answer is 1 over 24. 1 over 8 divided by 3. We're going to multiply this number and this number. So that is going to give us 24. And the numerator stays the same. So simple, easy marks. And the final question type that we're going to look at is multiplying fractions together. And again, these always crop up. You'll get at least one of these. Maybe if you're lucky, and I say it that way, if you're lucky, you'll get 2 because it's 2 easy marks. And again, here we go. Very simple. All you do with these questions is you multiply the numerators together and you multiply the denominators together. That is it. Okay. So the maths again is simple. It's just remembering which question you're answering, because the maths here is easy. All right. So in this question, 3/4 times 2/5, we're just going to multiply these together to get a new numerator, and we're going to multiply these together to get a new denominator. Really simple. So 3 times 2 is 6. And then we'll just stay like this. 4 times 5 is 20. That is the answer. Very simple. Job done. That's how easy these questions are. And then again, 3 on the other question, 3 times 1 is 3. 5 times 6 is 30. So again, that is correct. You know, some of you will be in the habit of simplifying that, so that might become 1 over 10. But you're going to get the mark for 3 over 30. In the arithmetic, in the reasoning paper, it might say to simplify, that's fine. But 3 over 30 is an equivalent, well, they're fine. You will get the mark without complicating things. So these are so easy to do. So again, here's some further examples from myself. And again, it's just remembering, we see these questions, and it's just going, these are those easy questions where we just multiply the numerators together and we multiply the denominators together. So I'm just colouring them in just so that we can see the relationship between, we're going to multiply the green ones together and we're going to multiply the blue ones together. So it's that simple. So again, 3 times 1 is 3. 5 times 7, 35. Job done. Over here, 1 times 3 is 3. 4 times 7, 28. And again, sometimes we might think, is that it? Is it that simple? Yes, it's that simple. You will get at least one of these, if not 2, and they're that simple to solve. Easy marks. And here's just one SATs example question, the only one that we're going to go through. So again, hopefully you can just see what the answer is. And all it is just basic times tables, stuff that you would have learned in year 4. So 2, and change the colour, 2 over 7 times 5 over 9. And again, you don't need to write this out. You might just be able to see that it's 10 over 63. Very simple. We write 10 over 63 and we get the mark. And essentially everything that we've gone through in this video is so simple, but there's at least 3 or 4 marks, maybe 5, that you can pick up with just these super easy strategies. And even though I just use the word strategy, they're not really strategies. It's just remembering fractions of amounts. We're going to divide by the bottom times by the top. Dividing these 2 questions, we're multiplying. So even though it says divide, we're multiplying. Okay. So we're going to multiply the denominators together, multiply the denominators together, multiply the denominators together, multiply the numerators, multiply the numerator, multiply the numerator. And then again, multiplying fractions, multiply the numerators together to get a new numerator, multiply the denominators together to get a new denominator, and the same, okay? So it's very, very simple. Divide by the bottom times by the top, multiply the denominator, multiply the numerator, multiply the numerators together, and multiply the denominators together. So 4 question types, probably going to get one of each. You might get two. These ones are definitely, these have cropped up all the time. You might get this one with a larger number. You'll probably get one of these early on before question 20. And they're super easy to do. So have a practice of these questions, guys. And I'd love to know, definitely comment on the video. Let me know what you think about these strategies. They're not really strategies. But again, the maths that you're doing in here, the maths is super basic. It's just remembering what to do, okay? Once you've remembered what to do, it's easy marks. You're going to save a load of time and you're going to smash your SATs with these simple processes. Well, there's that content covered. Fractions of amounts, multiplying and dividing fractions by whole numbers, and multiplying fractions by another fraction. So hopefully, again, very, very straightforward, lots of simple processes to follow, and with a little bit of practice, we're definitely going to nail those strategies and approaches when it comes to the actual SATs paper. So we can pick up those easy 3 or 4 marks, especially those dividing questions, fractions divided by whole numbers. Looking through the past papers, there seems to be a lot of those questions, more so than any others, 2, maybe 1, 2, sometimes even 3 of those in a SATs paper. So they're easy marks to pick up. We just remember, or we just need to remember what part of the fraction to multiply. Okay. Very simple, easy marks, and I know you're going to pick those marks up really easily in the SATs. So, as I said, there are going to be some bonus videos coming in the next few weeks, just in the run-up to SATs, just to iron out a few things just before we get there. So please